Is there a better tool that empowers a woman to defend against an attacker that's 100 pounds heavier? No. Well, then that's why it's so important for women to learn how to defend themselves with the most effective self-defense tool ever invented. For women led by women, the Not Me program is designed to help with training, purchasing a gun, and getting a concealed carry permit. And guess what? It's totally free. You need to sign up. Just go to notmesd.org. The program is also available in Orange County and Inland Empire. Get help today, notmesd.org.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for the intro, Dave. So today we're here to talk about how to have that tough conversation with your children about what sexual assault and rape actually is. I know this is something that some parents might not think about, and I personally am not a parent. I don't have kids myself, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I just think this is a very tough conversation that a lot of parents know they should have, but typically might not have that with their children. But I think that with the way things are today, think about this. Whenever we grew up, we were told not to get in cars with strangers, right? Like it was stranger danger.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we get into Ubers based off of the fact that they were close to us and they have a 5-star Uber rating, right? So things have definitely changed over time with the way we interact with strangers and people that we've never met before. But I feel that the conversation that parents need to have with their children about being safe and what constitute as an okay touch versus an inappropriate touch are things that are definitely they have not changed over time, right? So parents are surrounded by messages about child sexual abuse. Talk shows and TV shows, of course, warn parents about the dangers at schools and in homes and on the internet. But despite all the media coverage, parents don't get much advice about how to talk to their children about sexual abuse and how to prevent it. So I'm talking to all the parents out there about this, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, of course, because Not Me SD, this is what we do for adult women, of course, but these things can happen as very early age with, young children too. So we want to really kind of start to have that conversation earlier with our kids to make sure that they are aware of what can happen in these certain situations. And so as you start to have these, chats with them, they kind of take this with them, of course, into adulthood. So we're hoping that by having these types of conversations, we can help prevent future sexual assaults. So a couple of things that we really want to talk about when you're having that talk with your children, right? So talk to your children about sexuality and sexual abuse in age-appropriate terms. So depending on how old your child is, use terms that they're, familiar with. Like you wouldn't want to have that same conversation that you would with a 5-year-old, with your 12-year-old and your 16-year-old. So it definitely is a different talk track to have with different age groups. And you want to talk openly and direct about sexual teachings and teach children that it's okay to talk to you when they have questions, right? A lot of times parents can seem kind of embarrassed and, I don't want to talk about sex or anything like that, right? But having those open dialogues with your children and letting them know it's okay to come to me and ask for questions if you have them. That's something to have that kind of open door policy that's going to get them to be more comfortable around you to ask those types of questions. Of course, teaching children the names of different body parts so they have that language to ask questions and express concerns about specific body parts. Teaching children about some parts of their body that are private and no one else should be touching. I hate to say it, right? Let children know that other people should not be touching or looking at their private parts unless they need to be touched in a provided care. So like at a doctor's office or a nurse's clinic, right? And if someone does need to touch them there, a parent or trusted, a trusted caregiver should be there with them. Tell children that if someone tries to touch them in those private areas or wants to look at them, or someone tries to show that child their own parts, then they should tell a trusted adult as soon as possible because that's not appropriate. And all children should be told that it's okay to say no to touches that make them feel uncomfortable. And if someone touches them in ways that make them feel uncomfortable, they should definitely tell someone as soon as possible. This can lead to some slightly embarrassing situations, such as a child saying they don't want to give a relative a hug or a kiss, right? Like, you could take that in a completely different wrong way, but it's letting your child know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And work with your child to find ways to greet people that don't involve uncomfortable kinds of touches, right? Such as a handshake or, a side hug like some of us like to do, right? And you want to be able to talk openly about sexuality and sexual abuse. Also teaches children things they don't need to be secret. Abusers will sometimes tell a child that the abuse is secret and don't tell your parents or don't tell, your trusted caregiver, and let your children know that if someone is touching them or is talking to them in ways that make them feel uncomfortable, that they shouldn't keep it a secret, right? So having that open dialogue with your children and letting them know it's okay to tell me things, even if someone told you to tell, told you it was a secret. And make sure your child that if they do tell you something, they're not going to get into trouble. I know a lot of times children don't want to tell their parent that they did something or something happened because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble with their parents, and they don't want their parent to get them in trouble for that. And another thing to keep in mind too, when having these, tough talks with your children, is don't talk about it all in one big talk, right? Like you want to be able to have these conversations very openly and consistently if possible. So that way they know that it's okay to have these, kind of conversations with you and ask you these types of questions. And one of the things that I can't stress more about having these kind of conversations with your children is be available. Make sure that you have the time to spend with your child, to have that open dialogue, and let your child know that they can come to you with any kind of questions that they might have or concerns, and be sure to follow up with your children. Like after these conversations, kind of check in and make sure that they heard everything that you were talking about and that they understand these things that, you were discussed. And so I think that if we can help have, parents have these conversations a lot earlier in life, this is going to help them as they go into adulthood, because these types of situations are real, and sexual assault happens to a lot of women, right? Like the statistics show that 1 in 3 women will be a victim of sexual assault at some point in her lifetime. So if we can start grooming these young women to understand what sexual assault looks like and what to kind of be aware of, then I'm hoping that we can just save a couple more women from having to go through that situation.
Well, I think it's more important today than it's ever been.
100%.
Because you got schools now teaching what they want these kids to learn.
It's their narrative.
Right. And that's exactly.
It's their narrative.
And you have to combat that.
And it's hard enough for a grown woman to come forward and to let the truth be known. Imagine as a youth, how much more challenging that's going to be. They're going to be, they're still trying to learning to navigate the world and, kind of see authority and who do we trust, who do we not, and who do we respect, and who do we, and how do we cross those barriers sometimes when those we respect are the ones that are doing the damage and the harm. So that's a lot for a child to navigate.
And if you think about, too, the mental kind of repercussions that happen, like think about Mary's story and how she is still kind of recovering from this. If a young girl or even boy, has something happen to them at a very, very young age, it makes a very deep impression on them because children are very impressionable. So if you think about a situation where, let's just say a young girl unfortunately was sexually assaulted, she's going to feel that for basically the rest of her life. And it's going to take a lot of working through that, both mentally to kind of get to the point where she can handle that. And so children are very impressionable. So by having those conversations, helps them kind of understand that this is not okay and this is okay. And if this person touches me this way, that's all right. But if, grandma gives me a hug and a kiss on the cheek, then that's okay, right? So it's really trying to help them understand the differences of what is appropriate touching and what is inappropriate touching. And if you think, do you have something to say, Mike?
No.
So if you think too about, sorry, I sound Barb's Mike. If you think about the shooting socials and when we do our safety briefs, I know, Alicia, you do this and I do this too. We tell the women that we might be touching your shoulders and we're never going to touch you inappropriately, right? It's because we're setting the stage for, hey, like we're going to be moving you around a little bit, but it's always going to be, just on your shoulders, your arms, etc., right? So we kind of preface it that to help them understand that, all right, they're not going to be inappropriate touching you, right? Whenever we're especially at the gun range. And so I just think that this information and being able to have these conversations is just, it's going to help kind of imprint on these kids, right, for the rest of their lives. And so having those conversations, again, I've never had them before because I don't have kids, but I can understand that it might be tough to say, hey, this is what sexual assault is. This is what, rape is. And the definition of rape is a type of sexual assault involving sexual intercourse or other forms of sexual penetration against a person without their consent. And that can happen at a very, very early age. And we've heard of cases of these young, kids being, raped. And it's very, very unfortunate those situations happen. But then you carry that into adulthood. And again, the mental repercussions that can come from this kind of stuff. I mean, it's the ripple effects. And the ripple effect of an event like that happening is not a good one. And so if we can help prevent that and give them the tools to understand what's, what can happen, what cannot happen, I think it's just going to make that impact on these kids.
The numbers are staggeringly high.
It's ridiculous.
And those are the ones we know.
Yeah, well, yeah, It's very underreported, is my understanding.
63% go unreported.
I don't know. Well, how do you know that? Like, how can you tell?
It's a statistic.
Yeah.
I looked it up, Mike. Come on.
It was on Facebook.
But
it was on Facebook.
How can you quantify how many have been? I mean, once you figure that out, aren't they reported? Anyway, so
I see your logic.
I wonder if we just talk more about this stuff, and that's why you hear more. But golly, the numbers, the stories, there's sexual assault is it's so prevalent in society.
It was so secretive for so long.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's so much more. I think you were right in that it's more talked about. I think
it's because we have a lot of scandals that come out now, right? Like think about the Jeff Epstein scandal, and now with Nathan Fletcher, he has someone that's filing a sexual assault against him too, right?
Two people.
Well, let's talk about the Epstein thing for a moment.
That was a whole story. You can watch all that on Netflix.
But see, would you truly
No.
classify that as sexual assault?
No, because they were consenting.
Exactly. They were
Right.
flying to the
No,
island.
no.
The underage.
Yeah,
The
if you're-
underage.
There's no such thing as consent under the age of 18.
Well,
Yeah.
legally.
So that's
But if a 13 or 15-year-old girl says, heck yeah, let's do it.
well, that's
That's
not okay.
I mean, it's
Well,
still
I
not
know it's
considered
not.
okay.
I'm not saying that it's okay.
No. But I mean, that's not. It's considered.
There's still pressure
assault.
involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of like a boss and an employee or something like that, right? Well, gee, they have the power to hire and fire or whatever. Same kind of type of thing. Well, the adult is automatically in an authority position.
Well, yeah, but
so
all I'm saying is,
But you know what's crazy? The reason I think that maybe it's increasing is the number of people who commit these acts who were victims. You know what I mean? So a victim turns into, in many cases, turns into someone that commits these acts. So I almost wonder if, is this thing just spreading?
are
Hard to say.
we ever going to know?
I don't think so.
I don't
But you have to think too, Mike. 8 out of 10 cases, the person knew the individual that sexually assaulted them. So it's ridiculous. That could be a relative or a friend of the family, right? So just things to keep in mind. And again, parents out there, I know this is a hard conversation to have, but I definitely recommend having it. If you have any questions, I might not be the person to go to, but I can give you resources.
Right. The idea is to have these conversations early before there's a problem.
Exactly.
Like you were saying, use the terms that are appropriate for within your family, and it's done within the confines and the comfort of the home. And that way, if something ever does happen, the child is more likely and hopeful to feel comfortable to come forward. But if you wait until you start to see signs of a problem,
it's too late.
It's going to be more difficult.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.